So there's so many important kaupapa to discuss, but as I said before, this hui is focused on the model, how our PSGE will be made up at a board level. So that is the focus of this hui. Now others may have, you may have other kaupapa that you want to put on the agenda. So I'll give sort of a little bit of time for people to say that, and if we have time at the end, we can create that time for you to have that kōrero. So we'll do the presentation, there'll be the workshop, and that at the end of the workshop there'll be an update. Once the update is finished, that's really the completion of this hui. And then after that, there can be general business or things people want to talk about. So if you do, could I have those now? And we'll get our minute taker to, or Renika will note them down.
Auntie?
And then we can add that on to the end, as long as there's time available. Is there anything that people want to raise at the end of the hui?
Go, Auntie.
Yes.
Yep.
You want my name? Okay, Alpha Mitchell. Ngāti Kairo, Waipapa Marae.
And what's the kaupapa you want to raise?
Oh, I want to question the what relationship has this Maniapoto post-settlement governance entity and the New Zealand Crown entity have with the founding document, the Treaty of Waitangi, 6th of February 1840.
Kapai. We've got that.
Yeah, because they're not a party to the founding documents, are they?
All right.
Got it.
Any others?
Auntie? Oh, have you?
No, I feel that what I have to say is part of the, response back to the PSG.
Yeah. So I'll just re-emphasise that. The kōrero is around how that PSG is made up at the board. So it's largely not about anything else. That's the main thread of this week. Kapai?
In regards to that, I'm assuming that the agreement in principle is part of the conversation that we'll be presenting today?
No, that's not the main thrust of this week. So that's the kōrero, same again, can go in at the end and could be part of the update.
Yes, yeah, all right.
Yeah. But in terms of the main thrust of this week, it's that governance board. And I'm going to ask Renika to give me updates as we go through if I'm missing anything. But we'll kick into it now. So here's an overview of what we're going to be covering. So the journey so far, and it's right back to the initial actions. The purpose of this particular round of consultation, because it's the second round of consultation going into IDOS, we'll talk a bit more about, we'll recap on some of what we covered in round one, and then we'll cover off some of the options that the board have presented. It's important to note that while those are the options presented, there may be other thoughts, and that's fine, and that's what we're here for. And any other matters, sort of general discussion and the negotiations update. So the journey before mandate. So mandate was back in 2016. So the only reason we're standing here today is because there were breaches of Treaty of Waitangi. There were breaches. So what happened was claims were filed with the Waitangi Tribunal, and there are people in this room who have probably filed claims and many others who filed claims with the tribunal. Then there were Waitangi Tribunal hearings, so that was all the lawyers presenting the cases on behalf of the people who had submitted claims to the Waitangi Tribunal. And then the mandate was pursued. The mandate to represent Maniapoto in negotiations with the Crown. So that mandate was given to the Maniapoto Maori Trust Board by 72% of those people that voted. And that was achieved in December. So the consultation round, the mandate round was done around October 2016. And then there was a vote, and 72% of the people that voted said, yes, I am happy for Maniapoto Maori Trust Board to go into negotiations with the Crown on behalf of our iwi. Then what happened was, because they had mandate, they could appoint negotiators. The negotiators then went to the Crown, and they negotiated what they called an agreement in principle, some high-level agreements with the Crown around what redress would look like. And we deliberately use redress and not compensation. It is not compensation. let's be really, really clear about that. Compensation is you give me what I got, what you took. That's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with redress. Initial deed of settlement. So that's the phase we're in now. And so the last consultation round and this consultation round is to gather some information to help the board design up what that might look like based on feedback that we get and some other things. And we'll go through that soon. And then you need to move to a deed of settlement. So that's when it's a little bit more final. So we're working to make sure we get as much value beyond the agreement as possible. That's not necessarily financial value. So the EWI consultation hui, we started off in October 2015, so that was the new board at that time. And they started out with, we want to understand, we want to hear from our people. So we hit the road and we did the Maniapoto 2015 hui. So that was long before settlement was even on the Trust Board's radar. It was all about us wanting to understand a bit more. Then we had to step in and we had the mandate consultation meeting, as we just said. Now we're into the consultation hui for this phase, and this is the second round. Sorry, the treaty settlement consultation hui, those were some redress workshops and things like that. The 2 rounds of IDOS hui, one in April and this one that we're in now. Then what will happen, once we've got the information, there'll be some design work done and there will be a model proposed to the people to accept and ratify as a model. And that ratification, so there'll be the consultation hui first, where we go out and we talk, and then there will be the actual process to ratify, or for our people to vote on. Step in, Renika, if I've got any of that wrong.
Could you explain what IDOS means?
Sorry, IDOS is an initial deed of settlement. So I'm going to get you, Renika, to the initial deed.
You also say that the part of that is setting up the PSGE or getting a structure to present to the people.
That's the ratification. Do you want to talk about the difference between initial deed of settlement and deed of settlement?
So, kia ora koutou, Maniapoto Tribal Government, I'm the project manager for the trust, hence for the settlement negotiations, hence why Missy's throwing this to me. So the process that we go through in terms of initial deed of settlement to deed of settlement, the initial deed of settlement is essentially what the trust board as the mandated entity negotiates with the Crown. That includes all of the redress. They initial it with the minister to say, hey, yep, we have got what we as the mandated entity are comfortable with, and that's based on all of this engagement as well with you. And then it goes out to that ratification process. The deed of settlement and the post-settlement governance entity, they both go out together through the ratification process. And if Maniapoto Maori Trust Board say, Kei Te Pai, we agree with that, we want that to go ahead, both the settlement and the post-settlement governance entity, then we have a formal deed of settlement ceremony and it's formally signed, it's binding, and that is it. And then it goes through the settlement legislation. So that's the difference. The initial deed of settlement is something that the mandated entity says, yes, we are happy with. The final deed of settlement is what the people say they are happy with, and then we have a big celebration because everybody's hopefully supportive of that.
Kia ora, can you qualify which Crown? You mentioned the Crown. Can you qualify?
So that is
Be specific, please.
So that is the New Zealand government. So we signed with the current Minister for Treaty.
Okay, and so you're talking about a Crown that was not a party to the founding document.
We're not going to get into that here.
That
because
was
this-
that for the end.
That is for the
But
end.
that is
Okay.
who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So we signed with the Minister for Treaty
Yeah,
negotiations.
well, it's just good if you clarify this at the beginning, so we know, so the people know which parts are being railroaded down.
Yeah.
Thank
So-
you.
So if
That's
we use
right.
Crown, that's who we're referring to.
Yeah, the imposters,
For the-
yeah, okay,
for the-
thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand we're here today doing what we're doing and doing what we've done for the last couple of years
Yeah.
because 72% of Ngāti Maniapoto agreed that we do it. So to do anything else is to go counter to the call of our people.
That's 72% that voted.
That later.
That was like a very small portion.
We're not going to get into that because we're here for a positive hui. We're asking for contribution to the way in which we shape the entity that will manage the treaty settlement. So that is what we are here for. If you're here for something else, we can talk about that at the end.
So at any stage along there, if you didn't get the votes for, from Maniapoto,
Yeah.
then it would not move to the next stage?
Correct. Correct. So that's why
But
you've got to constantly keep checking.
It was only 5% really, because
Constantly
only a small portion voted. Yeah.
We move on.
But can you say that?
Okay,
I didn't
so
even get a voting form.
Renika's talked about the initial deed of settlement, and there are some components to that, and what gets most of the media attention is the dollars. But it's not all about the dollars, okay? So, there are the relationship and specific mechanisms. So there are things, we might enter into agreements with agencies for rights and interests and things like that. So, some people have rights to different properties. I think Hauraki have just negotiated rights to minerals. They are rights and interests. Come up to cultural redress, and that's things like making sure we can correct the names of our properties, of our places, that kind of thing. Then you come over into the commercial redress, and that's when you're talking about the cash and the value of any property. So those are the elements of the IDOS, I guess, in terms of what we get, but we're here talking about the PSGE, which is the entity that will be responsible for managing those things once they return. Is that clear? So PSGE is the element we're talking about today. PSGE, is a post-settlement governance entity. It's whatever you have a trust board managing iwi affairs now, it's whatever the new one is, that will be the PSGE. So when you hear that, you kind of go, because it's all jargon. So the purpose of the round two hui is to really explain the process and setup of that PSGE. That's the main purpose. And then to discuss some of those key elements before we go to ratification. So what we get out of this round will go into the mix so that we can design something so you can ratify it. And to seek your input about the future of Maniapoto me o ngā hapu maha. As we said before, the PSGE is the entity that will hold and manage settlement assets for current and future generations. Really important to remember that future generations piece, because we have a lot of people who say, what's in it for me? And it's like, well, it's what's in it for now and later. So we've got to be quite mindful of that. We have to have a PSGE because the trust board cannot and is not allowed to receive those settlement assets. And I think that's actually a good thing, that you have to go through a process to get the approval of your people to say, yes, we agree, rather than just default to what you've already got. And it can't be actually established until that ratification process we talked about earlier. So when we come to this PSGE design, what we're doing at the moment is getting the feedback of Ngāti Maniapoto. But what also has to come into the mix are the technical people who say what can and can't work, and also the Crown. They have their rules. This is not a game that we own the rules to. And we're under an illusion if we think we're driving the process. That's just not the case. So it comes down to what do we want as an iwi? What will work based on the experts and their experience, because people have done work and then they've realised it hasn't worked, and so we get the benefit of that. And then there's also the rules that the Crown have. Now, whether we like them or not, they can tell us to go away if we don't want to meet the rules. So that's just life. It's not ideal, it's just life. And so we are looking to shape up something that meets all three of those. So we need that PSGE to represent Maniapoto as an iwi, to be accountable to our people, to be transparent in its decision making, and processes and any other provisions, and it has to meet certain requirements of the Crown. But really, it has to be about us. But we acknowledge that there's some rules that we need to meet, unfortunately. So we went around round one, and so in round one we asked what kind of model do you want? Do you want all generally elected, so all hats in the ring, everybody choose? Do you want all representative, which basically says, you know, belong to a marae or a hapu or a cluster or a region and have representatives appointed that way? What our people told us, 82% said we want a bit of each. So we want some home representation and some going out for everybody to vote on, so everybody has an equal chance. So that's what they told us. In terms of function and focus areas, 91% said we should be focused on issues relating to our people and the well-being of our people as the number one. And then the second preference, culture. We should be doing a lot around our culture. Preference number 3, kaiau and environment. When they talked about the key skills and experience required, we've got marae connection, people management and engagement, social and culture. It's a very broad range. These are the things that came through. So rangatahi representation was one of the elements in the design that came through quite strongly. And rangatahi have had their own hui, and they pretty much have said the same thing. Because when you look at the makeup of our board, it doesn't really cover off that younger age group. There's no voice present for them to articulate life from their eyes. So it's not that we say we want it all to be young, but how do we make sure we've got the spread? Taurahiri, you know, comms and engagement. And I think some of these things we have to think about, whether that's the role of the board or the role of the operation. Those are the things we also need to think about. Taurahiri representation. You know, so what we're saying here is there's a range of feedback that we will be taking into consideration. We've heard it, and we'll absolutely take that into consideration. The trust board actually considers the private trust as the most appropriate vehicle. You go down a company, you've got to manage a share register every time a Maniapoto child is born. You know, how is that actually